looks like Harvest 2014 in Germany is winding down, but hopefully not before I can catch a glimpse of the harvest. I'm on a mission to learn more about the wines of Germany, and hope by taking part in the 2014 harvest that I can learn more about the people and the wines of this diverse country. My itinerary for this trip includes 4 stops to 3 different regions. The Pfalz will be the first destination, and where I'll be making 2 stops. The first visit will be to the Becker winery in Schweigen. Then to the Rebholz winery in Siebeldungen. Between these 2 estates, I'll be checking out some of the top Riesling and Pinot production in the country. Then I'll be making a stop in the Mosel region, to the Wegler estate in Bernkasseler Kues, to see what the harvest looks like in arguably the most prestigious and expensive vineyard in Germany. And lastly, I'll end the trip with a stop in the Franken region at the Hans Wirsching winery in Iphofen for a sneak peek at some top Sylvaner and Riesling from the region in 2014. So let's go to the Pfalz, but first, let's take a look at the region's vital statistics. The Pfalz has over 23,000 hectares, or a little over 58,000 acres under vine, second only to the Rhine-Hessen in terms of acreage. The region is slightly more weighted with white wine production. Riesling is by far the most important grape in the Pfalz, and increasingly important to the region is the Pinot family, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, and Pinot Blanc primarily. The Pfalz region is the #1 producer of Riesling in Germany. The climate in the Pfalz is dry and sunny as compared to most other regions in Germany, and therefore has a continental climate with Mediterranean influences. The soil of the region tends to be deep, with a combination of sandstone, volcanic, and limestone in places. Now a little more about the Becker winery, our first stop in the Pfalz. The winery has 28 hectares or 69 acres under vine and produces 12,000 cases a year. Most of their production is of dry wine, and the majority of their vineyards are actually in France. The Becker estate has been in the family for 7 generations. Friedrich Becker Sr. manages the vineyards while Fritz Jr. manages the estate and does the winemaking. The focus of the estate is on wines from the Pinot family, and it's fair to say that much of the Becker reputation has been made on their high-quality Pinot Noirs. As the Beckers have learned their terroir in the last decades, the estate has put more emphasis on maintaining balance between fruit and acidity, rather than letting alcohol levels become too high. Finesse over power is the aim of the Beckers now. So it's not surprising the Becker estate has been awarded with producing the top Pinot Noir in Germany multiple times over the last decade in the prestigious Gomeo. Like the estate itself, the clones it uses are a combination of German and French, that being the German Marienfelder and the French Dijon clones. There are 3 Grand Cru vineyard sites, the St. Paul and Camembert for Pinot Noir, and Sonnenberg for Riesling. Limestone figures prominently at the Becker estate, and it may explain why their Pinot Noirs have a finesse that one normally only sees in Burgundy. And lastly, the estate is a member of the VDP, an organization whose name literally translates to mean the Association of German Quality and Predicate Wine Estates. Generally, the top producers of Germany are part of this association. So let's go to our first stop in the Pfalz, the Fritz Becker winery in Schweigen. I just arrived at the estate and now I'm driving with Fritz to the Womberg vineyard, where harvest workers are picking grapes.
Now we're crossing the border here. Germany.
Oh wow, and now we're in France. We're driving by the St. Paul vineyard, a Grand Cru vineyard and one of the most important for the estate. We've just arrived at the Premier Cru Womberg vineyard.
Here we are.
That's the bad stuff, that's the good stuff.
Oh.
Try this in some overripe ones we don't pick. You can taste the difference if you want. One thing, perfect berry, and this one is just turning brown. So you don't want this in the good stuff.
Right.
You have to sort this out. Just want the good ones. They're both still good, but For the top level quality, you really have to single select the berries. Another 2 days, this will be completely brown. Wow. And on the other hand, you have these. They are just perfect. It's perfectly ripe. So it's not, you cannot just pick everything.
The warm weather combined with rain in the last few weeks made the vineyards vulnerable to rot. And now the pickers must pay attention to each grape bunch they pick and sort the bad grapes out. As Fritz said, for top quality wines, only the best grapes can make it to the winery. Seeing that everything is under control in the vineyard, Fritz decides to head back to the winery. The harvest workers seem happy with the fruits of their labor. 2 large containers of perfectly ripe grapes, and the last of the grapes from the vineyard, the workers pack up for the day. Back at the winery, some of the harvest crew celebrates the end of the day with some Federweißer, a treat normally seen in wine regions around the time of harvest. This drink is slightly carbonated and made from freshly pressed and fermented grape must. Federweißer is normally low in alcohol, typically not much more than 4%. The day isn't over for everyone. Pails need to be thoroughly cleaned out in preparation for the next day out in the field. Back in the winery, the work is just getting started with the arrival of the freshly picked Riesling grapes. First, the grapes are being put into the receiving hopper of the stemmer crusher. The stemmer crusher removes the stems from the grapes, leaving skins, seeds, and juice, which in this case will be left to macerate for hours before being put into the press. Well, I have a big day ahead of me in the vineyards tomorrow, so I'm going to pack it in for the day and leave Fritz and the crew in the cellar to do their work in peace. It's my second day in the Pfalz for Harvest 2014, and I'm off to work the vineyards at the Rebholz estate in Siebeldungen, where I'll be starting the day by working in the Kastanienbusch vineyard, one of Rebholz's Grand Cru vineyard sites, and where some of Germany's best Rieslings are made. The Rebholz estate has been in the family for over 100 years, but the family's been connected to wine since as far back as the 16th century. Today, the estate consistently rates as one of the best producers in Gomeo, having built a reputation as a top producer of Riesling, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Blanc in particular, all done in a bone-dry style with almost no residual sugar. Now back to the harvest in the Kastanienbusch or Chestnut Bush vineyard. I'm starting the harvest by working on one of the steepest slopes in the Pfalz. At its steepest, the hill slopes at about 60%. Not surprisingly, vines in the Kastanienbusch are planted at an altitude of 160 to well over 300 meters above sea level. The Rebholz estate has an experienced crew in the vineyards, many of whom have been coming for years to the harvest, and as such, they could work both fast and accurately, only selecting the best grapes. Like at the Becker estate, strict selection needs to be made in the vineyards to eliminate the bad grapes. But what is chosen can only be described as beautiful and perfectly ripe. The soil is an iron-rich mix of slaty clay and sandstone. The iron deposits not only contribute by giving the soil a red hue, but it also adds minerality, spiciness, and ageability to the wines. All these factors add to Kastanienbusch's world-class status in Riesling production. Today there are many vineyards to go through. It's perhaps the last day of harvest. So we're off to the next vineyard. We're now picking one of my favorite wines, Muscateller, an aromatic, floral white wine that seems to be becoming more popular. Although we have been working in the field for several hours now, everyone is moving just as fast as in the morning. Except me, that is. we have one more vineyard to do. Nine hours and several vineyards later, the harvest is officially done at Rebholz. It was hard but satisfying work. Now for a quick tour of the winery. Rebholz is a medium-sized winery, producing about 10,000 cases per year, with vineyards adding up to about 54 acres of land. The Rebholz use an interesting blend of high technology in the cellar and natural winemaking techniques out in the vineyard. Certified organic. The Rebholzes also employ the use of biodynamic processes, such as the use of cow horn manure. This is made by burying cow horns filled with cow dung in the soil during the cooler months, usually November through February. These small tanks are often used to ferment in small individual lots. The benefit of doing this is to guard the sense of place and special attributes that individual sites can offer to a blend. These special attributes or expressions of terroir would be lost if fermented in large vats with grapes from different areas. Later, if desired, blending can be done in a controlled fashion. Tomorrow, I'm back at the Becker estate, where I'll be working in the vineyard and in the cellar for the first time. We started the day at 8:30 sharp. Today we're picking the Golden Muscateller and Cabernet. There are only a few vineyards left to pick, and it's a gloriously beautiful day to finish Harvest 2014 on. Just one more vineyard now, and harvest is done. Everyone's excited to finally finish harvest. The 2014 harvest has officially finished, and everyone, cellar and vineyard workers alike, are gathering in the courtyard of the Becker winery. To celebrate the occasion, some of the estate's own sect, or sparkling wine, is poured to mark the end of the successful harvest. Even Emma, the Becker's dog, is excited to celebrate the end of harvest. Fritz and Russell are making sure that everyone has a glass of the rosé sect. The crew assembled makeup workers from all over Europe, including Spain, France, Poland, Romania, and Germany, among others. Now for a quick toast to thank the crew for their hard work during harvest.
Also, vielen Dank für alles, für die Hilfe, gell? Hat gut geklappt im Ende. Zum Wohl.
For the cellar workers, the celebration is short-lived. Russell, a fellow New Yorker, is engaging in a winemaking process called punching down. While the grape juice ferments, it produces CO2 as a byproduct. CO2 causes the grape skins and seeds to rise to the top, creating a thick layer of grape skin caps. Punching down forces the thick cap of grape skins to become wet, which prevents bacteria from getting into the wine and also increases grape skin contact with the juice so that color and flavors can be imparted. This is not only tedious and hard work, a task that is usually done at least 2 times a day per tank, but it's also very dangerous. An accidental fall into the tank means certain death due to all the CO2 being emitted from the fermenting wine. Andy, an enology student, is busy cleaning out a tank of the remaining grape skin and seed residue now that the fermentation process is finished. The fermented wine has already been pumped into another tank, and the remaining grape skins and seeds will go back into the press. I decided to help Russell put some grapes into the tank for fermentation. At the Becker estate, the emphasis is in using the gentlest means possible when handling the fruit. By putting the grapes manually in the tank using only small buckets, less of the grape's delicate flavors and aromas are lost. More grapes need to be unloaded, and I'm not moving fast enough, so Andy is taking my place. And in a corner, yeast is being activated and prepared for addition to must in order to start the fermentation process. Work in the winery is both hard and dangerous. If one isn't careful, a little mistake doing a seemingly insignificant task could mean losing a whole tank of wine. Not observing strict hygiene standards after cleaning a tank, for example, might cause mutant yeast strains or other bacteria to infect the winery and taint the wine. And of course, too much exposure to CO2, a byproduct of fermentation, can be fatal. And there are other hazards that can cause injury. Nonetheless, the camaraderie that goes along with working in a high-paced environment goes a long way to making work in the cellar almost fun. I decided to devote most of the day to learning more about filtration by shadowing Sandrine, the filtration expert at the Becker winery. Filtration is primarily done on white grape must for pre-clarification prior to fermentation, or on white and noble sweet wines just prior to bottling. The goal is to filter out the lees or dead yeast cells, and any other matter or bacteria that could threaten the stability of the wine after bottling. Filtration works by passing the must or wine through a filter medium that captures particles larger than the medium's holes. Complete filtration may require passing the wine through a series of progressively finer filters, such as the ones Sandrine is cleaning out right now. Curious to know more about Sandrine's role in the winery, I decided to ask her a few questions.
Je travaille dans les vignes en été et autrement dans la cave, on les vendange que dans la cave. Filtration, suivi de fermentation, dégustation, débourbage, tout ce qui se fait dans la cave pendant les vendanges. C'est un Riesling Weingut qui est en pleine fermentation, c'est pour ça qu'il est trouble. Et en fait, on le goûte pour voir s'il n'y a pas de défaut. Et s'il y a un défaut, on le corrige par un petit apport de produit pour que la levure travaille nouveau correctement. Voilà.
And what about the 2014 vintage?
Je pense qu'elle sera bonne. On a eu du travail, mais elle sera bonne.
Lucas is putting food-grade diatomaceous earth into a tank of white juice must. Sandrine then mixes the diatomaceous earth and grape must together. And then the resulting mixture is passed through the enclosed pad filtration system. Sandrine is now checking to see if the must that has gone through filtration needs further filtering. En fait, maintenant, qu'est-ce que tu fais? Tu cherches si soit clair.
Là, il y a encore un peu de trouble.
Sandrine waits a few minutes to see the clarity of the juice now. This time, the juice comes out perfectly clear. This is sediment left over from the filtration process. In this case, it's a mix of diatomaceous earth and coal. Coal is sometimes used as a preventative against potential off flavors. This is the diatomaceous earth remaining after the must has gone through the enclosed pad filtration system. In another part of the winery, Russell and Andy are removing the hose from a pump used to empty and transfer wine from one tank to another. Care has to be taken to ensure that wine isn't lost in the process. Yes?
I got accepted into the MW program.
Awesome! Russell's work experience is mostly in restaurants and on the import side of the wine industry, while other Becker employees are either full-time in production or work part-time as part of their enology studies. So what about some of the other characters at the Becker estate?
Yeah, you can say I'm the right hand of the two bosses. So in the vineyards I'm helping the senior chef, and in the cellar I'm helping the junior chef. There's a lot of things to do in the cellar and even in the vineyard outside, and so that they get not too much work. I help them out with anything. Yeah.
And what about the 2014 vintage?
Yeah, it was really hard this year. Yeah. We have a lot of picking and need a lot of time, and when you're out with about 15 people, we had two groups with 15 people, then it's really a hard thing when you don't come forward, when you need maybe double, maybe the triple of the time that you normally need for harvesting, and so it's really hard. But we are lucky now that stuff that we had in the cellar, it's good. Yeah, it's really good.
I'm Andy. I'm an enology student. I'm here for 1.5 years. Yeah, and this is my second harvest, so it's interesting. I learned a lot of new stuff. This year I was mostly in the cellar, which is interesting because I see how the grapes get processed, what we add to the berries or to the must, so it's interesting and it's nice to learn. This year I also learned a lot about filtration because I had a good teacher. With wine, or the most interesting thing about the harvest is we had a lot of problems with this fly, the Kirschessigfliege, which made it pretty hard for us. So my favorite wine, and I think the wine with the most passion and emotion and love this year, will be the St. Paul, because we selected the berries and grapes during the whole night. I think we went to bed at 4 or 5 o'clock, so that's a lot of power of hours in there, and I bet it's gonna be some good wine 2014. Prost.
After spending the last couple of days in the Becker cellar, it was time to head back to the vineyard, this time to find out about an incurable fungal vine disease called ESCA. ESCA is increasingly infecting vineyards across Europe and California. Some fear that ESCA could prove to be as devastating as the phylloxera louse in the late 19th and early 20th century, when it nearly destroyed the wine industry in Europe until the technique of grafting vines onto American rootstocks was developed. Today I'm meeting with wine grower Tony Moran to find out more about ESCA and maybe a possible cure.
My name is Tony Moran and I'm farming this small plot of old Riesling vines. The site is about 0.2 hectares, consisting of about 500 vines. We have a little bit of ESCA problem on this vineyard, which is quite common in the older vineyards. A wine trunk disease that eventually will, in normal circumstances, kill the plant. This is effectively what the disease does, so it completely rots the trunk from the inside and it becomes, this was still alive in the spring, as you can see, it's still fresh, but totally soft. It's not able to carry water anymore. The plot has been conventionally managed for approximately 35 years of its existence, and in 2012 we started an organic conversion. So from January 2012 onwards we have not sprayed any synthetical chemicals on this site, but farmed it in organic principles. The rate of ESCA infection we have here is approximately 15 to 20 vines per year, which accounts to about 4% annually, and this is something we have to write off. We lose the vines. This spring we had the opportunity to meet a professor of viticulture in Alsace, who informed he's been successful in combating the disease with aerating the vine. ESCA as a disease cannot survive in aerobic conditions, so the principle is quite simple and mechanical. We aerate the vine by drilling small holes, or alternatively you can use a small thin saw blade to cut through the vine. So I'm just here trying to identify a little bit of the soft spots within the trunk which suffer from the rot, and drill holes through the trunk and let the wine get some air into it. There is very little documented evidence that this works, very much an experimental treatment, but in the end when we're combating ESCA we have really nothing to lose. Eventually the vines will die. Here, as we can see, we have a clear ESCA discoloration of the leaves, shriveled grapes that were not harvested were just left on the vine because these are unusable, very bitter in taste, and easy to identify which vines suffer from the disease. You can really see where it's healthy. Like if I drill from here, you can see that it's really fresh. That looks normal. But then this dark brown, so basically it means it's wet. We would need to get that out. So it's rotten. I think I got pretty much all the wet stuff out.
Aerating the vine seems an interesting plan of attack against ESCA, but how will we know if this treatment is effective?
We'll know in the spring. if it starts to grow leaves and if it'll flower.
It's my last day in the Pfalz, but before leaving, I'm making one last stop in the vineyards, this time to meet up with Fritz Becker Jr. for a recap of the 2014 vintage at the Becker estate.
So 14 was a quite challenging vintage, but the outcome, the quality will be very good. The physiological ripeness was perfect, so the grapes were very ripe. The only problem was the warm weather we had, like in the end of the ripening process. That kind of speeded up the botrytis, which is not always good, especially in the Pinot varieties. You don't want the botrytis, and you can't use the botrytis in the Pinot Noirs. And we had to use a lot of harvest workers, as we are not harvesting with a machine. So we had to source a really big team, like the biggest we had so far. But that gave us the opportunity to make the best of the quality grapes that we had out there. You really had to take a lot of care in a vineyard. A lot of selection work had to be done. A lot of pre-selection in the winery had to be done. You had to be really 100% this year. Very sad to see all the grapes still out here.
At the estate, the combination of weather and the cherry vinegar fly meant there was a 40% reduction in their normal harvest yields. Fritz found some grapes that were hit by the cherry vinegar fly.
Smell it. Smell that.
The bunch smelled like vinegar.
Because we had several negative factors that came together in a few plots, like warm weather, rain, and the flies, the little fruit flies. They kind of sting the grapes, put their eggs in the grapes, and this is kind of bad. And so we had a vinegar problem in a few vineyards, like you can see here. One of these examples for the challenging vintage. You have the good grapes underneath, and here you have a few good botrytis grapes. But on the same bunch you have the vinegar grapes, and here you can see the little flies coming out. So this is bad. You don't want that in the winery, right? Here you can see the grapes are empty. So the little flies, they just kind of eat the grapes. And if you would smell this now, it smells really bad. It's like vinegar.
So how does 2014 compare with other vintages?
Regarding to the very high ripeness level and the nice acidity level, we can kind of compare it maybe to 2012. Acidity in some varieties more like 2010, but on a higher ripeness level. But ask me in like 8 weeks when some of the ferments are done. The stuff that we have in the cellar is just very good. It's great quality. So I think we made the best of it. But it was quite tough and challenging, I have to say.
I learned a lot in the Pfalz, at the Becker and Rebholz estates. But now it was time to hit the road, to my next destination on my Harvest 2014 itinerary, the Mosel region and the Wegler estate in Bernkastel Kues. Special thanks to all in the Pfalz who made my trip possible. See you in the Mosel. Tschüss.